The truth will always stand on its own 2 feet. But there are some people that want to corrupt the truth to serve their own deceptive motives. When those people are in law enforcement, we have to shine a light on it and expose it for what it is. A dangerous, intentional lack of ethics that puts the community at risk.
I don't understand why Sheriff Schmidt was directly involved in an interview. Like, I really don't. That should never have happened. I'm Stacy Kelsey, and I am a Dodge County resident. I worked in law enforcement for 15 years, mostly at the Village of Heartland Police Department. Over 10 of those years were a supervisor position, the last one being a captain, and I was honorably discharged. I resigned in August of 2022.
Well, I can't believe we're here after what happened last May. I just remember getting the phone call from Mom saying 6 police officers showed up to the farm and arrested Dad, put him in the car, and he's gone. I don't know what's going on.
That was a new experience for me.
I was like, What are you talking about? What on earth happened? So I guess we're here because I think there's a lot of people that want to know what actually happened and why it happened. And I think people probably deserve a good explanation.
And where it's at.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, where it ended up, because we know the case it's closed, right? It's over.
It's all finished. Everything is a done deal now.
Yeah. So, like, if you can boil it down, like, what actually happened last May, when leading up to that, and what transpired, and how did it end up now that everything has been resolved? Like, if you can boil it down.
Well, what happened is I made a mistake. It was in May 14th, I believe, a Tuesday, and the farm was real busy, and I got on the school board. We were elected to the school board, and when you're on the school board, you have to get these Chromebooks so you can get your information for a board meeting, which was the following night. So I agreed with the administrator who called me and said, just come in your work clothes and get your Chromebook so we can get you going. And my work clothes for the last 25 years has always been what I wear when I carry a firearm. And so I just hopped in the car and headed in, and when I was on my way out after getting my Chromebook, I discovered my firearm.
You were still sitting there?
I was actually standing up to go leave home, to come home.
So you were sitting with the administrator?
Oh, I was sitting with the administrator for a half hour before this. And
so you had your gun on the whole time?
Yeah, I couldn't. No one said anything, and I didn't even notice it. Oof. And the secretary was there too. The administrative secretary was there too. No one said a thing.
No one said anything because no one, including Dan Siegmann, was aware that he had brought his holstered gun into the school. The district administrator confirmed that in a public statement. In that statement, the school district administrator made it clear that it was Dan that noticed he was still wearing his sidearm. And it was Dan who notified the school district administrator of his mistake. So why did the Dodge County Sheriff write a completely different account in his report?
I noticed that Chris Neeson's statement to Dale was different than what Dan said, and different also what Chris Neeson put out in the public statement to the public. I've been looking over the report with the incident with Dan Siegmann in Dodge County, and when I reviewed it, there were a few things that stood out to me as far as the law enforcement side. The very first one would be, I know of some history with Dale and Dan Siegmann as far as different points of view and disagreements that they've had in the past. So the very first thing that I noticed was that Dale was directly involved in this investigation, versus if he really wanted an unbiased investigation, he should have right from the start requested mutual aid from another agency to investigate this whole thing. And that would even include interviewing the witnesses at the school.
Let's talk more about what happened here and how it all played out.
Yeah, this was, it turned into a real interesting scenario. What happened is I pretty much rushed into the school because I had a lot going on that day, and got my Chromebook, got the computer thing or whatever it was I needed to be the school board member to get all the information.
Because you had a meeting coming up that next day, correct?
The next evening was the first board meeting, and I had not gotten that yet, and I didn't have my information, and it was just not working out. So the administrator called me and said, hey, just quick, come on in. It's near the end of the school day. Let's just get this done. And I says, well, I can come in. If I can come in my work clothes, I'll come in. He says, yeah, just hop in your car and get over here. So I just hopped in my car, buzzed in there, went to the front of the school, talked to the secretary there, and she led me to the administrator's office, and we worked on getting the passwords and everything done, and I got my Chromebook. He gave me the Chromebook and the charger, and I put it down to my side, and it hit something. And that's when I realized I had brought in my firearm. I would have never done that, but it happened because I rushed in with my work clothes, which
Whoops.
usually I change the clothing, the firearm goes on the shelf, I don't worry about it, but I just hopped in the car and left, and I just never thought of it.
There were 3 people involved in this incident: the district administrator, the administrative secretary, and Dan Siegmann. Dan said that no one saw the gun because it was concealed, and he had forgotten about it until he realized he was carrying it during the meeting. In his written statement, the district administrator wrote that Dan checked in for their meeting per normal procedure, and that it was during the meeting that Dan realized he was still wearing his concealed sidearm. But that is not what Sheriff Schmidt wrote in his report. In his report, Sheriff Dale Schmidt chose to write that it was the administrative secretary who caught Dan wearing the firearm and warned the district supervisor, who then harshly confronted Dan. The administrative secretary confirmed no such statement.
And so not following up with a secretary who was stated in the report as a witness, and even the one who apparently brought it to Superintendent Niesman's attention, she was never interviewed, or no written statement was ever requested of her or asked or done.
Why was there Ozaki County officers there?
Because the sheriff of Dodge County, Sheriff Schmidt, determined that there would be a conflict of interest if he oversaw the investigation. Because he and I don't see eye to eye on many things, because I'm a Dodge County board supervisor and we oversee his department expenses and things like that.
Yeah, I'd say you guys aren't buddies.
No, we can get along, but we don't see eye to eye. And that's why I kind of figured something would happen because of that. But he supposedly sent it to Ozaki County, but if you look at the police report,
Right.
the whole investigation was pretty much done by him.
Dale himself interviewed the witnesses when he should have sought out mutual aid to say, here's these complaints that we got, to be unbiased and to have a fair investigation. Can you please take on this investigation?
Publicly, Sheriff Dale Schmidt indicated that as a result of a conflict of interest, he was passing the investigation of Dan Siegmann's incident to another county. Secretly, he did his own investigation and passed his uncorroborated, unsubstantiated, and unsupported version of that incident to the other county to use as their own, without doing any investigation at all.
Now, with Ozaki County in this case, they were notified. The official request was sent over about 2:10 p.m. on the 15th. So this is about a day after this incident happened, and the investigation already has occurred. Sheriff Schmidt already interviewed one of the witnesses. So the investigation was done by Dodge County and then handed over to Ozaukee County, which really Ozaukee County, if they were requested to investigate this, they should have taken the initial calls and said, here's our calls, and they should have interviewed all the witnesses. In their report, they basically repeat everything that Dodge County investigated, and then the only thing they did different was they assisted Dodge County with the arrest.
And then my lawyer asked, well, if you didn't talk to the administrator or the administrator's secretary, how did you come up with the charge against the defendant? And he was silent for a while. And then the investigator said, well, I read the Dodge County police report.
Fair. So now, this is all court record, right?
Yep, it's all there.
So anyone watching this can actually go and read. Like you could get the transcripts.
You get transcript, and it'll all be there. Yeah.
We don't have to use the word allegedly here because it's all
No.
been recorded. You can go verify what we're talking about. And by the way, we're here to just talk about what happened. Like, make your own mind up about what's going on.
At the hearing, the Ozaukee County investigator is put on the witness stand. He confirms that he was asked to investigate the incident involving Dan Siegmann to avoid a conflict of interest with the Dodge County Sheriff. The investigator was then asked if he actually did an investigation. Did he question any of the witnesses? He became visibly unsettled. Then confirmed that he had not questioned any of the witnesses. He then confessed that he based his confirmation of the felony charges against Dan Siegmann not on evidence he had uncovered through an investigation, but on Sheriff Dale Schmidt's uncorroborated, clearly questionable report that contradicted a public written statement from the primary witness.
That is why the conflict of interest issue comes
Well,
up.
that's what my question was. How is that not a conflict of interest if the Ozaukee County investigators used Dale Schmidt's police report without investigating it themselves? How is that not a conflict of interest?
It's a great question, and my lawyer asked the investigator when he was on the stand, how did you maintain that separation so the conflict of interest wouldn't be a problem? And he waited a few seconds and he said, I don't know. The district attorney of Ozaukee County told the judge, we don't want to charge him with a felony because we don't believe we can prove it's legitimate. We can't charge him with a misdemeanor because we can't prove that either.
Right.
So I pleaded no contest to a $44 trespassing charge just to be done with this.
But Schmidt says here, like, following this meeting, I am told, now this meeting is the one with Chris Niesman. I am told that conversation took place with Dan Siegmann advising that what he had done was very serious and he was advised that he should resign from the school district. Who did he tell that? Like, I don't know who the conversation is in between. I don't even know if I need to say something. It's just a very vague I don't even know.
I see that a lot happened here that really shouldn't have happened. So just compare the narratives that we read before. Why would the sheriff's narrative be so opposite of what the people who were there saw happen? Something's going on.
Penal Code 118.1 states that if the Dodge County Sheriff knowingly and intentionally wrote false information in his report, then he is guilty of filing a false report, which is punishable by a sentence of county jail or up to 3 years in state prison. How could Sheriff Dale Schmidt not know that the information he intentionally wrote in his report about the incident regarding Dan Siegmann was not communicated to him by any of the witnesses that were present at the scene when the incident took place? How could Sheriff Dale Schmidt not know that the report he intentionally wrote and filed with the Ozaukee County Sheriff's Department in respect to the incident regarding Dan Siegmann was not going to match the written public statement of the primary witness in his investigation? How could Sheriff Dale Schmidt not know, in light of the statements given by the primary witness and the administrative secretary, that the information he intentionally wrote in his report was categorically false?
Like, I would expect this from a deputy, I wouldn't expect this from a sheriff.